fellow patriots. This is Kelly Jackson with TruthWire News, and today I am joined by the D7 County Commissioner for Williamson County, Tennessee, Christopher Richards. Hello, Commissioner, and thank you for joining me today. I just want to give a little bit of context for people who aren't from here. So you're District 7. Tell everybody where District 7 is.
Hi, good morning, Kelly, or whatever time it happens to be whenever you watch this video. I am roughly, none of the districts are even lines, roughly the western side and the northern side of Brentwood.
Okay.
That would be the best way to explain it, is probably roughly in the shape of a T.
Okay. Okay.
It does
And
kind of go down the southern side of Franklin Road.
okay. And how would you describe the political makeup of your district?
From what I've seen in door knocking, it's very conservative. We
Okay.
did just have a Democrat elected to the school board, which surprised me a little bit. So we'll see how the next election goes.
Yeah.
But
Some
certainly,
Republican help. We'll cover that on another day.
yes, that's a separate story. I'm like, but it generally District 7 is very conservative, and also as constituents compared to other districts, they're very quiet. I send out a newsletter, and I rarely get feedback um, from my constituents, which is good and bad. I would like to get more feedback.
Yeah, but I'd say generally speaking, that probably means you're pretty well covering things that they care about, and you haven't made any decisions that they find upsetting or appalling or worrisome.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so today we are getting together because you and I have been working on something for the past few months. I've written a couple of articles on it, and that is the troublesome and convoluted resolutions process for Williamson County. And so can you tell me what it was about the process that kind of brought it to your attention? Why you feel it needs to what needs to be done to fix it, and then why.
Okay, well,
I know that's
when
a
I
lot.
well, no, when I first became a commissioner, we're a legislative body of the Williamson County, and it has an executive body, which is the mayor, and the judicial, which is the judges. And we are given the sole authority of drafting what at the county level we call resolutions,
Right,
which aren't as strong as laws,
right,
but they are supposed to be, they are legal documents
right.
that decide how much money we're going to buy, or we could probably pass a resolution saying that we can never have a mask mandate again, which is actually maybe not a bad idea.
Right.
But we can do those kind of resolutions. When I became a commissioner, we have the committee process, very similar to what they have up in Nashville, where we get into the in-depth discussions of these resolutions. I started noticing resolutions coming into those committees without a sponsor.
Wow.
They're listed up in the upper left-hand corner where they come from, which could be the mayor's office, could be legal, it could be Parks and Rec. All of these administrators were deciding to write their own resolutions, probably have legal write it for them,
Yeah.
and then it just gets introduced directly to committee. Um, I thought that that didn't sound right, and sure enough, I looked up in our rules,
Hmm.
and our rules do have some pretty big holes that you can drive to, but it's pretty clear that before a resolution is considered by the county commission, it needs to have a sponsor. So I went to legal, and legal said, yeah, that is our rule, but the committee process is an exploratory body, and they're not really considering it on behalf of the county commission, which is ludicrous. That's exactly what they're doing.
But just to clarify, the committee is made up of county
Of county
commissioners,
commissioners,
so
yes. And that's
that's an
and
absurd thing to say.
they're making a recommendation to the county commission. So clearly that is part of the process. In checking with other county commissions from other counties, as soon as I start talking about how this is done, they're like, oh my gosh, no, that's a breach of the separation of powers.
Mhm.
Um, except for when you start talking to commissioners in Williamson County. We've been doing this for so long which you'll find a lot of things in Williamson County, just because you've been doing it for a long time, doesn't mean it's correct.
No.
A lot of the older county commissioners will say that.
Yeah.
It's clearly a violation of the separation of powers. The mayor has in the past introduced resolutions that really haven't had a sponsor, because what in effect ends up happening is the resolution is introduced to committee by, say, the mayor's office. It is considered by a committee, and then it is signed as a matter of process
Right.
by the chair of the committee.
Right.
That becomes the de facto sponsor of the bill. So it
Whether or not
automatically,
they know it. They
yes, and they're starting to learn it because of me. And that so it will go on to the commission. And so there's no real safeguard to keep these bills or resolutions from going into the county commission. This really came to light when we considered buying the radio station WAKM.
Yeah.
And that was actually a resolution that came from the mayor's office.
And what was the
And
price tag on that, Chris? Do you remember?
that was $400,000.
Okay.
And it went through some of the committee processes, had one commissioner who had signed it as the committee chair, who was considered the sponsor. During that commission meeting, I asked that particular Greg Sanford, did you sponsor this? He was like, no, I don't want I'm planning on voting no on this. I want no part of this. So Commissioner Paul Webb then spoke up, and I honestly can't remember if his name was on the resolution or not. It may well have been, but he's like, I'm the sponsor. The irony is that Paul Webb voted no on that resolution, which would be very unusual in Nashville for
Right.
somebody to sponsor a bill and then vote no on the bill.
Right.
So our system is broken right now.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody in the bureaucracy of our government, the county government, can introduce a resolution to committee and pretty much get it before the county commission. The first safeguard to preventing that from happening is supposed to be the rules that we follow,
Right.
that you have to have you want to have a commissioner who's willing to get behind it. And quite often we have resolutions that are presented in committee and even before the commission, and we'll look around for somebody to explain it to us, and there's nobody there.
Because
And
they're not truly sponsored by anyone. They've been submitted by one of the bureaucratic institutions
correct,
in the county government or the mayor's office.
correct. And sometimes we have one of those bureaucrats available to explain it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even bother showing up.
Yeah.
And I'm sad to say they'll still get voted on, even if we
Yeah.
don't completely understand what the resolution is.
Yeah.
And they usually pass. Because somebody will go, well, I think this is what I understand. And I've had the commissioners who have been there longer explain it that, well, they just trust the person it comes from.
Gosh.
My issue is those bureaucrats were not elected by the people.
No.
And it is our job as commissioners to decide whether or not these resolutions are okay based upon the needs and wants of our people.
Right.
And not some bureaucrat sitting in the county administrative building
Right.
deciding that he wants a new water park without asking anybody about it.
Right.
The way the process should work for somebody, let's say they do want to build I'm saying a splash, but Brentwood has a splash pad attached to there, which the county paid roughly $1 million for. The way that probably went was Parks and Rec decided that they wanted this and they introduced it, and it just went through without a sponsor and just got built. What it should have happened was a commissioner from Brentwood should have gone, hey, we need a splash pad over here and I'm willing to sponsor it.
Yeah.
And they know all the details of it, and they can talk about it in committee, and they can talk about it during the county commission.
Right.
And that's the way a resolution is supposed to be done.
And perhaps maybe even before that's even done, the idea that somebody brings it to them, or it's an idea that they have, they've even gone back to their constituents and said, hey, I've got this idea for something that I think will really enhance our community. What do you guys think? And see what kind of feedback you get before you even consider presenting the resolution for passage to the committee, then to the full commission. So,
And I'm glad you bring that up because I have a good example. A resolution that I'm working on is they're building the new Brentwood Middle School.
Yeah.
And right next to it, where they have a bunch of trailers right now, they're going to put a practice field in, which Brentwood has a shortage of field space because of their cramped campus and they have no
Yeah.
room to expand. This practice field is planned right now upon the completion of the Brentwood Middle School to be grass.
Okay.
And I've had several parents and PTO members come to me and say, "Hey, can you see if you can get it turf
Sure.
instead?"
Yeah.
And I've asked the school system. The school system said, "No, it's not a budget priority for us." And I realized, hey, I'm a county commissioner. I
Yeah.
can just pass a resolution. But what I wanted to do is make first sure that that is what the people want. So I've been taking the time to talk to the parents, to talk to the PTOs and say, do you want a turf field? So far it has been, and I haven't written the resolution yet. I probably plan on introducing it sometime this fall. But that's a perfect example of the
Yeah.
process working. I'm representing the people of Brentwood.
Yeah.
And I'm making sure that they really want it because maybe some people would have reservations about having a turf
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
And so far, nobody does.
Yeah.
And that is how our resolution, it's so rarely done like
Yeah.
that, that
Well,
it's alarming.
and what I witnessed when I went to the Rules Committee hearing, I think it was what, last week? Was it
Mhm.
last week? The response, the general response that I witnessed with my own eyes was number one from, and I'll just gonna name some names here. County Commissioner from District 2, is it? Judy Herbert. And I hear this a lot from her, generally speaking. When anyone tries to introduce a more correct or more constitutionally consistent way or a more representative type of a government way or any kind of change that actually is more reflective of the way things are supposed to be done in
Mhm.
a representative government, generally speaking, the response from her is, why do we need to change it? It's always worked just
Yeah.
fine this way. And to try to explain it to somebody who clearly has zero idea of why it is she's sitting there and how she got there. What is the tip? What is your general response when you do hear, well, it's going to slow things down. It's not how we've always done it. What's your argument to people like that who just don't seem to get it?
I I didn't make that argument during the particular rules committee, but what I would say, and I have said at different times, is good. Good. I want it to be slowed down. We are approaching $2 billion in debt.
Yep.
Something's out of control there and moving, and we got there really quickly.
Yes.
We were at about 600 million in debt 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And something's going too quick. There's clearly these resolutions are being introduced and quickly approved without a lot of thought to
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
the debt is just a screaming example of it.
Yeah.
And I think slowing down, that is often the argument used in Williamson County government is we need to approve this because it's
Right.
urgent. There's just and there are some, I will go on the record. I do think they need a new juvenile justice center and a
Yeah.
new jail. But rushing that, which
Right.
they'll say that they considered it for the last, and we're getting a little off track here, but
Right.
they'll say that they considered that for the last 8 years.
Right.
There's really no consideration that went on there. Like
No.
they didn't think of any different ideas.
It seems that there were other things that sort of took a priority for somehow, some reason, and they were
Yeah,
less
schools.
important things like a library or, you know,
Exactly.
that could have
And
waited.
there's very little prioritizing
Yeah.
in the county because they'll just pass another bond measure and borrow more money.
Yep.
It's really, to me, those commissioners seem like a young teenager, early 20 somethings with a credit card with a pretty high limit.
Yeah.
And they just view, I need a new
Hey.
car.
Yep.
Let me borrow money for it. Hey, I
Yeah.
want a new stereo for my car. Let me borrow money for it. Well, now I need new tires for that car. Let me
Yeah.
borrow money for it. And there's plenty of room on the credit card, and eventually they're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not necessarily right now, but hey, it's going to be all okay, and
Yeah.
you justify it.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's other people's money,
Yeah.
and they're not really understanding to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We're going to have a tax increase coming,
Yeah.
and how that impacts some of the people in our county is not going to be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and that sort of segues into all of the we have obviously have a lot of transplants that have come into
Yeah.
Tennessee over the last handful of years due to the completely and totally tyrannical restrictive COVID measures that are being enacted in other states like California, Washington, Illinois, New York. They come to Williamson County, Tennessee because our governor and other news outlets and places have sort of characterized our county as like the most conservative county in America, and our
Mm,
property taxes. The big draw here seems to be the property taxes are incredibly low for what we offer insofar as public schools and amenities. So that would be something that would be, I think, a resonating message, don't you think, to our new transplants about keeping those taxes low? Because as somebody who used to pay property taxes in California,
mhm.
I felt lucky to pay like
Yep.
$4,500 a year.
Yes. And I grew up in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't stay there for too long as an adult, partly because of the taxes.
Yeah.
One of my first cars, gosh, had like a $2,000 tax bill on it for property tax. And
Wow.
it was not an expensive car. And that's due every year for just the privilege of owning a car.
Right.
So we are lucky.
Yeah.
But what is lost on a lot of commissioners who are willing to raise taxes more is
Right.
we already collect because of the high value of real estate here in this county.
Yes.
I think we collect the second most amount of money.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that, but we collect a huge amount we have a large amount of revenue
Yes.
that comes in from
Yeah.
the taxes. And just because we're an affluent county
Yeah.
doesn't mean, in like comparison to Rutherford County, it doesn't cost any more to
No.
run an affluent county than, well, it shouldn't cost any more to
Shouldn't
run.
cost anymore.
Like
Yeah.
then, Rutherford County has jails to build. Williamson County's got jails to build, schools to build, schools to
Yeah.
build. We have the same basic things. We do tend to get off track
Yeah.
in Williamson County and buy Renaissance fairs and have extremely nice um, facilities, just
Yeah.
you name it, and like any
Yeah.
kind of our animal
The
control
bells and
facility.
whistles. The bells and whistles.
They're all very, very pretty. The new Brentwood Middle School is
Yeah.
beautiful. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Well,
beautiful.
and I'll even say as somebody who moved into an area of Williamson County that built a brand new high school and a brand new middle school and elementary school 7 years ago that my children attended. When I walked into that high school, it was like the community college I attended in
Yeah.
California. And my children have gotten a good education there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful facility. But we see that the mindset when you go to enough of the county commissioners meetings and you attend and you listen, and even have other members of the community who sit on other boards like the school board showing up to, say, your budget committee meetings and just saying, hey, raise taxes, as though it's something that's just, it's like a it's as though it's just like, of course, just raise taxes. It seems to me like you said, even though we have an affluent county, some people don't know is 70% of the money that we do take in goes toward the schools, only leaving 30% to do everything else. And some of that probably has to do with the burden being on us because the state doesn't return as much to us as it does other
Yeah.
counties because we make so much money.
Correct.
But we are building at an enormously fast rate. So I have a question, and so this is something that's occurred to me several times, is because of the fact that we are adding so many more new homes in such huge numbers in Williamson County, does it follow that we would then be increasing our revenue for property taxes with every new home that goes up, or is that an erroneous thought process?
I used to think that, and it really should work like that, but they basically figured out the tax structure in very simple terms
Okay,
that let's say every 10th house is going to have a student go to
okay,
one of our schools.
yeah,
And instead it's like 70% of the houses.
yeah,
I think I'm exaggerating there, but as you can see, the model doesn't work out. We do have the adequate facilities tax that is only charged on new homes, which is a tax based upon the square footage of that house.
okay,
Um, and that has helped. Clearly, we've seen again and again, growth does not pay for itself.
no,
And I'm like, so we've spent a lot of money trying to attract these people.
right,
We do have more taxes, but it's not enough to pay for all these new schools and all these new
no,
buildings.
no,
Or we wouldn't have the debt. It's as
right,
simple as that.
right.
We just would not have the debt.
So, where are we at with this resolutions process, and what do you see the outcome being, and what can our readers do? What can the community do to maybe make an impact on the end product of this process and what we really need to see it become in order for it to be reflective of a representative government?
Well, I think the Rules Committee has been kind in saying that they would try and work with me.
Yeah,
What I've been seeing so far, and it's a compromise, is they want to be able to have the resolution signed right before they're seen by committee,
hmm,
which is it's a lot better, but I still think you're going to be automatically signing these without really thinking about it.
right,
And honestly, I think that's up to the commissioner. If a commissioner wants to sign 12 resolutions that he or she
right,
doesn't really have a clue about, then that's kind of up to her. You mentioned Judy Herbert. She's
yeah.
sponsored all of those bond resolutions that we just saw this week for 300 plus million. That's something that's on her, that she's the sponsor of those
So,
resolutions.
so if the mayor wants something, he kind of knows which commissioners are friendly.
Seems that way.
Mm,
Yes. And I will note another thing that your listeners and viewers should know
yeah,
is that our bond, sorry, not our bond, our budget committee
yeah.
has either Judy Herbert as the chair or
Ah,
Chaz Morton as the chair. They
interesting.
just rotate back and forth every single year. Nobody else, because the mayor, by law, gets to appoint those people,
Yeah.
and they just go back and forth
So
and
he
back and forth.
so he chooses
There's
those two or those
by
committees.
law, unfortunately, that's why hopefully people can understand the importance that commissioners have
Yeah.
on drafting their own resolutions, because the mayor already has a lot of power. An extreme, he gets to
Right.
pick the whole budget committee. The county commission can approve it, but it's very hard to override his recommendations. So he generally
Yeah.
gets whoever he wants to on that budget committee, who's going to give him whatever he wants to
Right.
be approved by the budget committee.
Right. So
And
would,
it's
like you've pointed out before, because of the fact that the mayor's office and the county commission share an administrative staff,
hmm,
that in and of itself, regardless of the process changes, it seems as though unless there is a change to that, and the county commission ends up with its own administrative staff, um, and none of these resolutions even touch the mayor's office. They go
yes.
directly to uh, Jeff Whidbey from the staff of the county commission to be filed and then to a committee. So it shouldn't really even see the mayor unless it's getting signed by him at the end of the process.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, because we share, and there is a um, little side note. Not only does the mayor draft and introduce resolutions, but most commissioners submit their resolution to the mayor's office, and he decides which committees they're going to see, which is not part of the separation of powers. But yes, we should have our own staff. There is the issue of we wouldn't need a lot, maybe just one person.
Yeah,
Who does that person report to then? And that
yeah.
is an issue. The
Perhaps the chair of the
Yep,
commission.
which is not
Yeah.
a full-time job. They're not
No,
there a lot.
Yeah.
It creates some complications. I don't think they're insurmountable. I
No.
don't think right now the county commission has the appetite to hire their own staff because they don't see it as a
As
problem.
a problem. And I think that that's probably where we're landing here is
Yes.
the fact that we have people who are just saturated with their own apathy and indifference, and they don't think of themselves as a representative of the people so much as they think of themselves as a bureaucratic mechanism.
That is very well put. I do think
Yeah,
that they see their role more to help the mayor get his agenda done
yeah,
than have be a representative of the people to get their agenda done.
yeah,
And I see it very differently because I was very honest in the way I got elected to say I was going to be, fiscally conservative
yeah,
and socially conservative for that
yeah,
matter.
yeah,
And I've done that.
yeah,
And I feel very, confident that most of my residents support me, or I'd be hearing negative things, but maybe, next time at the ballot box, and I'd be fine with that. But I've
yeah,
been extremely honest with my
yeah,
constituents.
yeah,
And it's what we have happening right now is clearly broken. What the Rules Committee, I think, is going to recommend is still it's putting a Band-Aid on a broken process.
yeah,
We need the mayor and the administrative staff to
completely
not be
removed.
involved at all in
Yeah,
drafting these resolutions.
yeah,
They should be going to a county commissioner saying, I want to build a new school. I need to do a bond for it.
right.
Can you draft a resolution for me?
Yeah.
And that's the way it should happen.
So what can the community do to get involved in this process of trying to get this changed? What can they do?
Well, I would suggest starting with emailing your commissioner. That's the
Okay.
simplest thing you can do. This resolution will be heard at the October County Commission meeting, which I don't know what day of the month it is, but it's the second Monday in October.
I think I heard the 14th, but don't.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I'm not sure, so I didn't want to say it. I don't have a
yeah,
calendar in front of me.
yeah,
It will be heard again, so that would be a good time to show up. But more importantly, it's really good to let your commissioner know how you feel. Um, and and I'm gonna kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent here. It would be good to show up at the Rules Committee. Technically, they should do 7 days notice for that.
mhm,
It's kind of hard to figure out when the Rules Committee is going to be meeting, and that's something as commissioner I would like to fix
fix.
also,
Right,
because if you do know that the Rules Committee is meeting, you typically don't know what they're considering. Well, no,
right,
you don't know because they don't publish that at all.
right,
And
right.
I'm all about let's let the people see whatever we're doing,
Yeah,
whatever hot mess it might
that's
be.
right.
Let them speak up. And so the Rules Committee will be meeting in the
Yeah.
next month
So
to discuss this, and it would be nice to have
yeah.
citizens there. Uh,
Transparency, transparency, transparency. That
I,
should
I
be
would suggest there is an online county calendar
okay.
and just keep track of it and see
Yeah,
which committee. And honestly, if you just have a passing interest in the budget,
yeah,
show up for the budget meeting. You might be surprised.
yes.
I, as a county commissioner, try and make every committee meeting that I possibly can because you learn
You learn things.
little. Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't learn as much as you should.
right,
There should be more in-depth conversations
right,
on like some of these bond issues and
right.
whatnot. But you're going to learn a lot more than you would at the county commission meetings.
Right. So where can people find you? What are your socials? Do you have socials as a commissioner?
I
Or
do.
something?
I have a website,
Okay.
like Elect C. Richards, I think. Probably the best place to start is going to the county
Okay.
commission website and finding my email, and you can
Okay.
go ahead and email me. That
Okay.
is and it's a long email address, so it's simpler to go to the county website.
Yep.
I'm listed there with all the other county commissioners.
Yeah.
I do have a newsletter that I send out about once a month. I'm very blunt and honest in it.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of explain what's going on. I'll be doing something about this resolution
Okay.
to amend the rules that we just spoke about,
Yeah.
and some other stuff. And my website has languished for a while since my election,
Yeah.
but I think I'll probably be doing that because it's information is power to the people.
Sure.
Like it's what you're doing is very important.
Yeah.
Just informing the people because
Yep.
most people don't even know about the debt.
They don't. They don't. And I think they're sort of appalled by it
When they
because
find out, yeah. And
Yeah,
well,
it's
they
like,
assume that everything's going just fine.
right, right. And then they come to this wealthy county and realize, well, because we're a wealthy county, we think we can just keep borrowing more money because we'll always have the money to service the debt. And
Well,
not
and
necessarily always going
technically,
to be true.
technically we can. We have a lot more, but the taxes that would have to go up
Oh,
would
yeah,
be stunning
yeah,
for even the more wealthy residents.
yeah,
And that's and that's I'll usually hear commissioners go, well, we've got a big tax base that we
yeah.
can tax if
Draw
we want,
from,
well, why aren't you doing it? Well, because they don't want the residents to know how much
right.
they're spending.
And it's not very popular around election time, is it?
No, and we're getting close there.
We are.
We're less than 2 years out, and
Yep.
there's
Yes,
a
we
lot of
are.
talk about it already. I'm
Yep.
like, they'll be slowing down on those bond measures.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the last big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I think we covered everything. Is there anything else that you want to share, or do you feel like we've kind of covered it, well enough? Or is there anything else you want our readers to know or understand?
No, the only thing I would say is, and we started with, contact with me, is know who your elected officials are, whether they be a county commissioner, and know how they vote.
Yes.
Don't assume that they vote conservative because they
Nope.
say they're conservative.
Yep.
Because we have a lot of elected officials who
Yes,
say that
we
they're
do.
conservative and
Yes.
do not vote that way.
No.
And so keep track of that. There's a lot of organizations that will help you
Yes.
and keep track of, what the votes are. It's a lot of information, but as a voter, I think it's an important right that you need to
Yes.
exercise and not
Yeah.
just throw away your vote by going, well, he's
Yep.
the incumbent, so I'm going to vote for him
Yeah.
because I recognize his name.
Yeah.
And I would say that's the most important thing, countywide, state, excuse me, statewide
Yeah.
and federal, understand what all these
Yeah.
people stand for.
Yeah. Well, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that should sort of be a mindset for everybody who lives in Williamson County, in Tennessee, and in the United States as we approach November 5th, which, as you and I know, is a very big day for us here in the
Yes.
United States. So thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you being here with me. And I will tell people that I know you really well. You and I are good friends, and
Yes.
you are a man of integrity, and you're just trying to do the best that you can for the people. And they really, really should appreciate you. And I hope they contact you and express that.
It is an honor. It truly is.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chris. You have a great day, and thanks for joining us, and come back again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.